You know a person generated by artificial intelligence if you saw one. Experts warn bad actors are using AI in the latest romance scams, with unsuspecting victims being tricked out of money and personal information. In this Watching Your Wallet, consumer investigator Carice Jackman spoke with a romance scam survivor about her experience and shares tips on how you can spot a fake.
I found myself being very masterfully psychologically manipulated to the point I made financial decisions where I trusted this person and I ended up losing close to $500,000.
Shreya, who asked us not to use her full name out of fear her scammer will find her and to protect her privacy, is speaking out in order to help others. She says this romance scammer pretended to be after her heart, when in reality, they were after her money.
What people don't understand that the scams are getting a lot more complex with two things going together, AI and cryptocurrency.
It's a tactic we've heard before. Scam artists now using deepfakes to earn people's trust, adding a new twist to romance scams. David Myman, who runs the evidence-based cybersecurity group at Georgia State University in Atlanta, has been closely monitoring how fraudsters are using AI to gain people's trust and commit fraud.
We see many actors, both local actors but also global actors, infiltrating dating apps, looking for profiles on Facebook, on Tinder, on other platforms they have access to, taking the images from those profiles, establishing fictitious profiles.
The FTC says the reported losses to romance scammers total $1.14 billion, with the median losses per person around $2,000, the highest reported losses from any form of imposter scam.
It's interesting because romance scams are underreported because a lot of times people are ashamed, they're embarrassed, they don't want to talk about it because it's so emotional.
Melanie McGovern with the Better Business Bureau says you shouldn't feel embarrassed. She says if someone online starts turning your romantic conversations into discussions over their hardship and need for money, it's a sign to delete the contact and move on. The BBB is also watching the emergence of AI as well.
Your voice could be cloned, your photo could be cloned, a video could be used.
Remember, never send money, crypto, gift cards, or wire transfers to someone you've never met in person. And if you're unsure of your online lover, do a reverse image search to see if the images are associated with another name. After what she experienced, Shreya says it took some time for her to heal. Now, she's using her experience as empowerment.
It became very important to me that I become part of the solution. What we can control is more people knowing about it. And this is where the media, advocacy efforts, just getting the word out there can be very impactful so that less people fall for it.
With this Watching Your Wallet, I'm Carice Jackman.
The FTC also says to make sure you tell a trusted friend that you're talking to someone online. The agency says romance scammers often try to isolate people by insisting on their silence. Still ahead, the Trump campaign responds to criticism from the Obamas, plus new protection as he rallies on the road.